If everything changes, what can you trust? The Buddha's answer. Chapter 1. Nothing Lasts. Facing the Truth of Impermanence. Everything we know is moving. Quietly, constantly, sometimes gently, sometimes suddenly. But always it moves. The Buddha taught that this is the nature of all things. From the stars that shine for billions of years, to the leaves that fall in a single afternoon, from the breath we just took to the thoughts that rise and fade in our minds, everything changes. This truth is called anicca. The Buddha didn't offer this teaching as a theory. He encouraged us to observe it directly in our lives. And we do see it. Hair turns gray. Faces grow older. Friendships shift. Feelings appear and disappear. Seasons come and go. Even mountains wear down over time. A Greek philosopher named Heraclitus once said, "You cannot step into the same river twice. Because the water is never the same, and neither are we. Every moment, something is different, inside us and outside us." Modern psychology says that much of our anxiety and depression comes from resisting this truth. We hold tightly to things as if they would last forever. Our youth, our relationships, our roles in life. But no matter how hard we try, they don't stay. We try to freeze something that was never still to begin with. And so, we feel pain. The Buddha reminded us that this pain doesn't come just from the fact that things change. It comes from how we relate to that change. He taught that dukkha, suffering, arises from upadana, which means clinging or grasping. We grasp at what is fading, hoping it will stay. We trust the things around us to stay the same, even when deep down we know they won't. We put our trust in wealth, but the market crashes, or our health fails, and the money can't help. We trust in relationships, but people grow, move on, or pass away. We even trust in ourselves, our identities, thinking, "This is who I am." But the self is not one thing. It is a collection of parts always changing. Body, feelings, thoughts, memories, awareness. Buddhism calls these the 5 aggregates. None of them stays the same. So when we trust in the self as something solid, we're placing our trust in something that is already slipping away. It's not wrong to care about things. The Buddha never said to stop loving or stop trying. But he reminded us to love without clinging, to live with open eyes, to care without depending. Facing impermanence can feel frightening at first. There's a deep part of us that wants something to hold on to, something steady, something certain. We look for that in people, in careers, in beliefs, even in identities. But everything we try to grasp eventually moves. And yet the Buddha did not say this to make us feel hopeless. In fact, he said the opposite. When we see impermanence clearly, we stop trying to force things to stay. We stop fighting the flow. And in that moment, something inside us relaxes. Instead of looking for what doesn't change, we start to understand how to live with change. We begin to find a different kind of strength, not in holding tight, but in letting go. This isn't the weakness of giving up. It's the quiet strength of seeing clearly. The Buddha taught that facing this truth is the start of real peace. Not peace that depends on things going our way, but peace that remains even when things fall apart. Because it's not built on illusions. This kind of peace doesn't come from outside. It comes from understanding reality and living in harmony with it. In a world where nothing lasts, what we need is not more control. What we need is clarity. Not more guarantees, but more wisdom. And that begins with one simple truth: everything changes. Chapter 2. The problem isn't change, it's attachment. We often say we accept change, but our hearts tell a different story. A loved one grows distant. A plan falls apart. A body ages. Something in us tightens, resists, mourns, not only the loss itself, but the loss of what we thought would last. The Buddha never said this feeling was wrong. He simply pointed out what causes it, not the change, but our clinging to what cannot stay. We place our trust in things that shimmer for a moment and vanish the next. Youth, reputation, comfort, approval, even ideas of who we are. We know, at least intellectually, that these things won't last, but that doesn't stop us from reaching for them. And when they slip away, we suffer. The Buddha taught that this is not a failure in us, it's a misunderstanding about the nature of the world. He reminded us that whatever is subject to arising is subject to ceasing. This isn't just about objects or people. It includes feelings, memories, even the thoughts we use to make sense of life. Everything that comes together through causes and conditions must one day come apart. But rather than seeing this clearly, we often live as if permanence were possible. We get attached to outcomes, to identities, to the idea that life should go our way. And we're shocked when it doesn't. In many ways, we treat life like a project we're supposed to manage. We want control, not only over what happens, but how long it lasts. And so we micromanage. We obsess. We compare. We plan every detail, hoping that certainty will save us. But control, too, is a kind of illusion. We don't control time. We don't control change. What we control, if anything, is how we meet this ever-shifting moment. Modern psychology has a name for this grasping. It calls it experiential avoidance, or resistance to reality. It leads to anxiety, exhaustion, and even despair. Buddhism simply calls it attachment. And the cure isn't apathy, it's wisdom. Not running away from life, but learning to meet it with open eyes and an open heart. This is where the Buddha's insight stands apart from other ways of thinking. Some religions speak of trusting in an eternal being who governs all things. That kind of trust brings comfort to many. But Buddhism offers something different. It invites us not to place our hope in a force outside of life, but in the patterns within life itself. It asks us to look, not up, but in. Like the Stoics of ancient Greece, Buddhism recognizes that nothing external truly belongs to us. But the Buddha went further. He taught that even the self we think we are is not solid. What we call me is just a flowing process, sensations, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness, all arising and passing away. There is no fixed essence hiding underneath. And paradoxically, this is good news. Because if the self isn't fixed, it means we're not trapped. We're not stuck in one identity, one story, one role. We're free to grow, to learn, to let go. This teaching can sound unsettling, but it isn't meant to leave us feeling empty. It's meant to show us where real peace begins, not in trying to hold the waves still, but in learning to float with them. So if the problem isn't change, what is it? It's the way we try to hold on. the way we turn away from life's flowing nature and demand that it pause. But the Buddha never promised a world without change. What he offered was something better, a way to live in a changing world without being broken by it. He showed us that freedom doesn't come from controlling life. It comes from understanding it, from seeing deeply that everything that comes must go, and that clinging only leads to pain. And in that clear seeing, something softens, something lets go. And in that moment, we stop fighting the river. We begin to flow with it, not lost, but more awake than we've ever been. Chapter 3. Trust yourself, but not the self you think you are. There's a strange paradox in Buddhist teaching. On one hand, the Buddha taught that there is no fixed self, no unchanging core inside us, just a flow of physical and mental events, rising and fading. And yet, on the other hand, he also urged us to trust ourselves. But what does that even mean? Trust yourself, if the self is always changing. This is where the teaching gets subtle and beautiful. The Buddha didn't tell us to trust our moods or our stories about who we are. He didn't say to trust the voice in our head that's busy judging or comparing. What he pointed to is something deeper, a capacity, not an identity, a possibility, not a personality. He reminded us that even though we're caught in confusion, we each have within us the seed of awakening. In Mahayana Buddhism, this is known as Buddha nature. Not a soul, not a separate self, but the potential in every being to wake up, to see clearly, to live with compassion. It's not something we need to earn. It's already there. Covered up, maybe, but never absent. So when we say, trust yourself, in a Buddhist sense, we're not saying, believe everything you think. We're saying, trust that you can grow. Trust that you can understand. Trust that you can live with less fear, less anger, less clinging. That you can find peace, not by becoming someone else, but by letting go of what you are not. This kind of trust is quiet. It doesn't shout. It doesn't need to prove anything. It's like the faith a gardener has when planting a seed. You don't see the flower yet, but you trust the process, because you know the conditions are there. The Buddha also spoke about 3 deep supports for this kind of trust. They're called the 3 jewels: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. When we trust the Buddha, we're not worshiping him. We're honoring the fact that a human being, just like us, woke up from confusion. That's powerful. Not because it puts him above us, but because it reminds us what's possible. When we trust the Dharma, we're not clinging to beliefs. We're trusting the patterns of reality, the truth of cause and effect, of impermanence, of non-self. These aren't ideas to debate. They're things we can feel in our breath, in our relationships, in the way joy and sorrow come and go. And when we trust the Sangha, we're not idealizing anyone. We're simply recognizing the strength of walking this path together. No one does it alone. We learn from each other's insights and also from each other's mistakes. A community, even if imperfect, can help us stay grounded when the wind of life starts to shake us. But trust in Buddhism is not about surrendering your mind. It's not about blindly following. The Buddha never asked for obedience. He encouraged inquiry. He said, "Test the teachings the way a goldsmith tests gold, not with emotion, but with care and attention." This kind of trust is called Saddhā. It's not passive. It's confidence that grows from seeing clearly, from watching how things work, from living the teachings and noticing. This brings suffering that brings peace. Real trust, in this sense, is built slowly. It doesn't come from someone's charisma. It doesn't come from a book. It comes from experience, from watching your own heart over time, seeing what opens it, seeing what closes it, and realizing that no one else can do this for you. The Buddha put it clearly. No one saves us but ourselves. No one can, and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path. This may sound like a burden, but actually, it's a deep kind of freedom. It means you don't have to wait for someone to choose you. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be sincere. You just have to keep walking, even when the road is foggy. So, when everything else is uncertain, can you trust yourself? Yes. But not the self made of opinions and memories. Not the ego trying to prove something. What you can trust is your capacity to observe, to learn, to love, to begin again. You can trust the part of you that watches a thought rise and doesn't believe it. The part that feels the sting of anger and chooses kindness instead. The part that fails again and again and still shows up the next morning with a soft heart. This isn't blind hope. This isn't spiritual fantasy. This is real. And it's enough. Because the Buddha didn't ask us to become something more. He reminded us to see what's already here and trust that it's enough.